Finding your flow state. That's what's coming up on the Art of Bombing, episode 158.
My friend Dan, he's got a podcast, 'cause all comics need a podcast, and nobody had a podcast called The Art of Bombing. So Dan went out and bought a tape deck. Who knows why he bought a tape deck? Now podcasts don't get played on tape decks, but Dan is from the 80s. So hey there, all you funny jerks, come talk to Dan about your work. Tell him all about your worst times. It's The Art of Bombing.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Art of Bombing. Dan Bublitz Jr. here with you on Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. I hope everybody had a fantastic week, and I hope this new week is finding you well. Today on the show, my guest is a comedian from New York, Johnny Azari, and we had a great conversation. He had a great story about performing at a nudist colony, and he talked about transitioning from music to stand-up comedy. So those are a couple things that are coming up on the show. Before we get to that, though, we got to take care of, the business and whatnot. With the pandemic, I don't know if people are going out to shows and, doing comedy, or how you feel about it. I know people are on both sides of the fence about it. Some people don't want to go out because they're trying to prevent the spread of coronavirus, which is good, and I get it. And there's other people that are going out and doing shows because they got to make a living, and I get that side of it too. And I don't know where you fall. I've been kind of dabbling a little bit. I do have a taping coming up, so I do have to get ready. So I have been going out and doing a few little shows and open mics and whatnot. And last week, I went to a great open mic that I want to give a little shout-out to. I went to an open mic in St. Cloud, the Keller Bar open mic, and it was a great mic. It's hosted by Matt Doima, and if you're ever in the area, go check it out. It's on Wednesdays at the Keller Bar, and sign-up starts at, it's right around... starts at 9, I think the sign-ups are, and the show starts a little bit after 10. So it's a little late for a weekday, but, hey... If you want to do it, do it. It was a great mic, and I had a great set. And thanks, Matt, for letting me come up and do some time. And speaking of Matt, he's also got a great podcast called the Awful Service Podcast. Check that out. The reason I bring that up is because I did my first in-studio recording since the pandemic started. It's been a long time. I've been doing a lot of these remote, and I did one in studio with his producer, Jalen Russell. And that's not what's coming up on today's show, but I wanted to bring that up. So I actually put the studio back together and had somebody in studio. We had the sanitizer, and we had masks and socially distanced, and it seemed like it worked pretty good. So that's going to be coming up. That episode will be out next week. So keep that in mind. Now, back to the live shows. I do have some stuff coming up. I am going to be, because I'm getting ready for that taping in October, which is in Provo, Utah. If you're in that area, come check out the Dry Bar taping. But if you're in Iowa and South Dakota, I have some shows coming up there, permitting they end up happening. With the pandemic, you can never tell. Everything is just kind of playing it by ear. But Friday, September 18th, I will be in Sioux City, Iowa at Marty's Tap. And then Saturday, September 19th, I will be in Sioux Falls at Boss's Comedy Club. If you are in those areas, I encourage you to come check out the shows. I'm getting ready for Dry Bar, so the comedy's going to be clean, mostly. I'm gonna definitely be doing, working on the set that I'm gonna have taped, so that'll be clean. But who knows what'll happen? You never know how the night's gonna go. We start out clean and end dirty. Isn't that what we want? Or maybe we want to start out dirty and end up clean. I don't know what you're into. I'm not judging. But if you're in those areas, come check those shows out. I would greatly appreciate it. And you know the drill, the usual business. If you haven't done so already, I would really, really, really appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star rating and then leave a review. Say something nice about the show. That would be great. It really helps. The ratings and reviews help other people find the podcast, and you can help other people find the podcast. Share the podcast with somebody. When you're listening to it on Stitcher or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit the share button and share it onto your social media channels. And maybe some of your people want to hear this podcast. Maybe they'd be interested interested to listen to comedians talk about their worst shows and how they got through them, because that's what this is all about, the art of bombing. And, of course, make sure you hit that little subscribe button. And all the episodes, everything else, artofbombingpod.com, all the previous episodes. This is episode 158. That means there's 157 other episodes that you may or may not have listened to, but there's definitely a well of insight into the business in those 157 other episodes. So now let's get into this episode with Johnny Azari. Enjoy.
I also love God, but I hate religion. Love God, but I hate religion. Because religion makes people irrational. I saw this sign. It said, Jesus, the only way to God. I was like, honestly, buddy, I took one hit of DMT and I got there in like 2 seconds. All I'm saying is I got to God before you, and he told me to tell you that Jesus is a metaphor. I don't expect the South to laugh at that. You have your integrity, I have mine. I do the joke anyway. But this country was founded on the right for all of us to be wrong.
I believe you were on a virtual comedy festival. Was that like last night? 2 of them now. How has that been?
It's like a heroin addict getting methadone.
I'm sure
it'll get you through. It'll take off the shakes, but it's not really what you're looking for.
No, yeah, absolutely. I did some virtual comedy, but the whole concept of a whole virtual comedy festival, to me, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was actually pretty surprised at how low the attendance was. I was assuming it was going to be low, but I was like, wow, there's like 10 people that aren't comics. And I know that both those festivals, like Burbank and Jersey City, if they were live, they would have been packed rooms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's also, with a festival, like, so much of the reason you do it is, like, one, it's networking, is being in the place and meeting the other comics and just the social kind of, like, aspect of stand-up. And then also it's like it's fun. You get to go to a city for a weekend and just chill and do comedy, So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm sitting here and I'm like, I've got my daughter with like, headphones on because, I don't need her to hear me talking about eating pussy or whatever.
Oh, that's funny. Definitely don't need that. But you're right. That's one thing with, the comedy festival aspect of it. I mean, I did some virtual comedy. Like you said, it's not the same as live comedy, but it's something. But the whole idea of like a festival, like the whole point is really to go and network, and it's almost like a little vacation or like a little comedy camp or whatever. And when you can't have that, it's almost like, well, what's the point of doing this festival at that point,
Yeah, comedy camp. That's a good name for it. I like that.
Yeah.
I got into 3 and DC Comedy Festival. They're like, we're waiting till this shit's over, and I wrote them an email. I was like, thank you so much. Yeah. I really, it's you spend so much money submitting to these things, and it's like
no, absolutely.
They're hard to get into.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep.
I mean, I still have the credits. Not that that's going to do me any favors, but
yeah, right. Yeah, that's I help with a comedy festival, and we didn't even open submissions this year. We're just like, we're not going to do it. We're just going to take the year off, and then hopefully this COVID stuff will be somewhat under control to where next year we'll be able to come back. But
yeah, that's which comedy festival do you work?
I help with Snow Jam Comedy Festival. It's just a fundraising comedy festival in South Dakota. We raise money for Special Olympics.
Oh, that's cool. I think I submitted to that one. I submitted to something.
I feel like
in South Dakota.
You probably did. I mean, I feel like even though we haven't met in person, we've been friends on Facebook. You do look familiar, but yeah. So it's one of them things where it's like, even being on that end, I know how hard it is to get into these things, and then I see all these people, because even I still submit to festivals, and I don't get into them, a lot of them, and I always joke, I'm like, I probably wouldn't even get in my own festivals if I submitted, you know what I mean? Like, but I see all these festivals suddenly trying to do it virtually, and I just can't wrap my brain around that. But hey, I guess if people tune in and watch it, I guess there's that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with festivals is if it's corrupt, you're not going to get in, and if it's honest, you're not going to get in.
That's a good way to look at it.
It's just like, you just submit, I set aside $500 a year to submit to these things,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you can submit to the top ones and then like a couple fun ones, and like, you get a couple, there hasn't been a year I haven't gotten into one,
Which is good. That's always good. Yeah, I'm kind of the same as far as, I don't submit to a ton. I'm just like, all right, I'm going to spend this much money on festivals. And it's usually not a lot. It's usually like under $100. I'm like, I'm not going to spend a ton of money. So I'll submit to a few and it'll be good. And typically I don't get in, but I'm like, whatever. I'm helping a festival. I get it. It takes money and everything to run a festival. There's operating fees and things like that. So I totally understand it. But it's I think it's smart, though, for a comic to actually have a budget, though, for festivals, because it's still good to submit,
I've always made the money back, because if you cast that wide of a net, you get into enough. I mean, if you're willing to tour, like if you're a road comic like I am, I go and play these festivals, and then I can come back through there and book like 7 paid shows. So I get the money back, every time. Yep. So that's just, to me, it's like, I'm not getting rich off of it, but it's not like a total just like waste of money, And that's
absolutely
how I look at it.
Yeah, which is a good way to look at it. Because it really is an investment, even if, because some festivals, depending on the festivals, some have industry, some don't, some have bookers or whatever, and, making them contacts can be good too,
Yeah. They all claim they have industry.
That's a lie. We never claim that we have industry at ours.
I want to play a festival then.
We're like, we'll try to get industry here, but we don't guarantee that's going to happen. Well, we're like, we can guarantee is we're going to have a good audience, and it's going to be a great weekend.
That's awesome, man. I like South Dakota. I played there a couple times, a long time ago, and I played, where the fuck did I have? Aberdeen.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that tiny little dot on the map, and like they were just so astonished that somebody came through that the whole town came out.
Most of the towns in South Dakota are just tiny dots on the map.
Yeah, it was fun. It's pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It can be, especially on the eastern side of the state, not so much. The western side of the state's pretty good. I actually don't live in South Dakota anymore either, so I live in St. Paul, but I still go back quite a bit because that's where I grew up. So
you're ground zero for Black Lives Matter, then.
Yeah. I'm in that. Yeah, across the bridge. Yeah. So
how is that? I haven't talked to my friends up there.
For me, there's still protests going on, and it's definitely cooled down a lot here. Obviously there's other things happening in the country now, so focus has been kind of probably pulled away. But even when it was going down, because I'm in St. Paul, which, it's across the bridge, and things got a little out of hand in a couple different areas in St. Paul, but not like it was in Minneapolis. So
really, wow. I figured it was both cities were you just people don't know that St. Paul exists, so the headlines would just say Minneapolis, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, there was some, looting and some buildings that, people try to start on fire and things like that in St. Paul, but not nearly as bad as, Minneapolis. It's like an entire block, there's like a whole area that pretty much got destroyed and all that, so... But it's definitely been an interesting thing. I've only been up here for a year too, so
I'm like to town.
Yeah, right.
Your torch.
Because in a year we're gonna try to burn it down.
Honestly, when that shit broke out, I could not believe that it started in Minneapolis. Like, I was like, really? This is where the unrest that I've been waiting for 20 years is going to start from? Is fucking Minneapolis, not like
right
down L.A., not South Chicago, not like. I mean, I was just like, all right, I'll take it. That's awesome. I'm glad this is finally happening, but I didn't see it coming from there.
Nobody probably saw that coming.
I know there's a large black population there. I saw a comic that was from out of town once there do a joke that he was like, where are all the black people? I was like, you haven't walked around very much, have you? Because there's a lot here. But yeah, it was, I was just like, okay, that's cool. Yeah,
it's that, and that's something that always fascinates me too. When I see like that, I'm like, how did people come to this area? Like, why would they come to this area? Like, I think that all the time because I grew up in the Midwest. So anytime somebody from another country or another culture or anything has an opportunity to come to America and they end up in the Midwest, I'm just like, what were you thinking? But then they're probably, to them, they're just like, it's America. It's, the same everywhere.
Yeah. It's whenever I see immigrants, like non-white people in the Midwest, I'm like, just keep going, dude. LA's a little farther. Like, why did you stop here? Like, I guess it's the same reason the Pilgrims stopped or the settlers. They just got tired of walking. They're like, this will work. This is fine. I'm good.
Yeah, that's probably it. They're just like, this will do it. All right, let's start planting some roots, I guess. I'm just like, even I don't want to be here sometimes.
I like the Midwest.
I do. I like it enough that I moved back. Like I lived out in San Diego for a few years and out in California, and I was like, I want to be back in the Midwest. It can be nice, but it's definitely in the last year tension is there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it has its charms. I mean, unfortunately, the Midwest has become so political because of all the swing states there.
Yes. Yep.
So it's become like the epicenter for like the nastiness. That's like,
it really, yes. It's really, for me, that's one thing I've really been trying to grasp, come into terms with too, is like all these people I grew up with and seeing how they really stand on things and like social issues. And it's just, I'm just like, oh man, I can't take this. You're a terrible person. You're being a terrible person. You know what I mean? It's like, you're being a terrible person. People are dying, and you're just like, whoa, they should have complied. What? No, they shouldn't have been shot when they were unarmed. It's like, get the fuck out of here with this business. So,
yeah, I tweeted out all of the people, all of the Second Amendment advocate people have lost credibility since they're not using the Second Amendment to defend the First Amendment right now.
No, absolutely,
that's the whole fucking argument. It's not like I'm going to go kill it. I need this to protect me from the government. Well, the government was like stomping you, the people, right? And you're just like, nah, fuck it. I'm just going to shoot some deer, right? Like,
yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the saddest part is like, I know people like that are all about having their gun and they need to protect themselves, and they're the Liberation Party and they don't believe in the government should be coming down on us on anything. And then it's like, well, here's your chance to shine. And they're like, yeah, but I got to go to work tomorrow.
I know. I was just because I'm pro Second Amendment. I'm pro all of the amendments. I like them all. They're all good amendments. But like when you're just like, you know, when your whole argument for like 50 years has been, I need this gun to defend myself from the government, and then the government is fucking you up, and you're like, well, it's the side I don't like, right?
Yeah,
it's the other side. And it's like, no, we're all one people. The government is corrupt. The people are fine. Like, you got, I don't.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
It's like, shit.
Yeah, it's like it basically boils down to, you know, when it comes time to, you know, put your money where your mouth is, people don't have the money to put. You know, they're like, yep, I can't do that. Yeah. So I've been real frustrated with stuff like that.
Yeah.
Especially the last few days, because I'm all about, you know, people not getting murdered by the police, and
nice.
You know, yeah, it would be, you know. So when I see people say shit like that, I'm just like, oh. But it is what it is. But we'll get it. Now that we talked about politics, before I get too riled up on that, because you can tell I'm like,
tuned out.
yeah. Now that everybody tuned out, we'll go back into comedy. I always like to have my guests tell a story about a time where they felt like they bombed or had a bad show. So I'm going to go ahead and let you tell your story.
All right. Well, I made a set list of sets to talk about. Okay?
Set list of sets. I love it.
I got like a couple different bombs that lead into a good show, and they're all kind of like structured in the right way. So we'll go. All right, so the first one I want to share is this is I'm a musician. I started off as a musician my whole life, and I don't play music anymore because I fucking hate it after 23 years. But it's how I got into comedy. Was I was touring around doing Delta blues music all by myself, just traveling with a guitar, singing sad-ass songs. And I learned very quickly that I had to, like, pep things up because the music was just so depressing. So I started talking in between the songs to, like, and lift the spirit, put levity in, and I realized I could make people laugh. And once I realized I could make people laugh, I started writing jokes. And then I realized I was doing stand-up. And then once I figured out that I was doing stand-up, it's all I wanted to do. And I basically just threw my music career under the bus because people would book me to come and play like 2 hours of blues, and I'd maybe play 15 minutes of music. Maybe.
Oh, wow.
You know, and instead I'd be sitting there talking about like fist-fucking midgets or something like that, right? Exactly what they didn't book is what they got. So there was this one show I did in Worley, Idaho, at a nudist colony.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And I got it in my head. I was like, I know what I'll do. I'll slowly take off a piece of clothing after each song, right? So, like, I started off fully dressed, and then I finished a song. I go, oh, it's really hot. I took off my jacket. I finished the song. Oh, it's still hot, my shirt. And I used to sit down when I was playing, until I was finally totally naked. And my encore to close was I stood up and I sang Bob Dylan's Blowing in the Wind while shaking my dick around, right? Like, the answer, my friends, is blowing in the wind. And, you know, there's a nudist colony, and they're all a bunch of 60-year-old liberal hippies, and that song was basically, you know, they're like, we shall overcome, like, it's like basically going into a Southern Baptist church and pissing on the cross. Like, that was pretty much like the equivalent of what I did to them. They fucking hated it. They did not like it at all. That was my closer. I thought I'd leave to applause, laughter. No. It was just everyone got up and walked away.
Oh, jeez.
And I got, like, such an angry letter from the booker. She was like, we told you to don't disrespect the nudist thing, and you cursed, and this and that and the other thing. And I was just like, I don't think I'm going to be welcome back to this place. And that was a show that I got through this website called Concert in Your Homes, where this guy has put together this network of people who book house concerts, but none of them have a sense of humor, and none of them like anything with any teeth. Like, it's basically like just kindergarten music for old white people with too much money. And he called me up, and I got put in timeout, basically. He was like, gave me this long talking to and like blocked me from the website for like a month.
Oh, jeez.
So that was definitely a bomb because, that joke did not land the way I had expected it to land.
It's funny how that. I mean, how was the rest of the set? Was it going fine, playing music and doing? And just when you decided to do that, that's when they're like, "Yeah, we're not having it."
Yeah, it turned on a dime. It was like they were into me, they were enjoying it. They weren't crazy about me, but they were like digging it, you know.
Yeah.
And then that was just like absolutely not. Like, I used to have a whole like bit about that story that it was like on my first album. I did it years ago. I don't remember any of the jokes from it, unfortunately. Otherwise, that story would have been a lot more funny. If I remembered all the things.
Yeah. Well, the bombs don't have to be funny. They're usually better when they're horrifying, and that sounds pretty horrifying. Trying to it's just the fact like doing a show for a nudist colony, like I know, and that's like that's like a thing that people do now for shows too, where they do like the undressed comedy or whatever. And performers are pretty much naked or whatever, and that whole concept to me is just like I'm not into that. Nobody wants to see me naked, let me tell you. Then when
nobody wanted to see any of those people naked. And there was I remember the bit I used to do about it. There was a dude who like bent over in front of me, and I saw his asshole, like all of it. And I had like this vision, and the bit is like 10 minutes long, and it goes into like basically like the political, like it was the election of Trump and Clinton and all that and this shit. And I go into his asshole, and I have a nightmare about like Hillary and Trump both raping me in his ass. That's not it. See, I'm bombing now. It's great. I'm not even telling.
That's funny.
But no, there was like, why are the people who go to those nudist colonies people that nobody wants to see naked? You know? And then also, it's like if you're going to book a naked show, that is like the most ripe atmosphere for slapstick comedy. You know what I mean? You're naked. Do funny things with your dick. Like, that's what went through my head is my dick is out. It's a prop. Let's use it, you know?
It's like, finally, I don't need to use the mic stand as a dick.
I got my dick to use as a dick. This is perfect. So many, and in a non-sexual way, too. It's not like I started jerking off on the stage. I get that. It's like, all right, come on, dude. Like, blowing in the wind. The answer? My dick? I don't know. Thought I'd get a better response.
Oh, that's funny. I'm just trying to picture a whole bunch of naked people not laughing at that. And that whole scenario just makes me laugh. Just, it's just like, oh, man, nobody wants that.
No. It's a great story, though. I'll never
It is.
That.
Well, I'm sure that's definitely an experience one will never forget. Now, when you doing a lot of music before you did comedy, were you able to use a lot of your contacts that you made, like with venues and stuff, doing music and start doing more comedy? Like you talked about how they would book you for music and you'd show up and not do a little bit of music but mostly comedy. Did that like burn a lot of bridges? Or
that burnt so many bridges. So I actually managed, after 5 years of touring as a musician, to eke out like about $25,000 to $30,000 a year from just driving around and doing shows, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a working artist,
Yeah, for sure.
That was my income. Like it paid for itself so long as I just kept driving and going to show. I was eating, I was having fun, whatever, And I completely smoked all like that. I threw it all on. I was so committed to stand up, and still am. I maybe financially I did not make the correct choice, but like
I'm laughing because I understand. That's a sympathy laugh.
It's something that's indicative is me. I have built things up to watch them burn so many times. Like I've reinvented myself so many. Like I've done it over and over again. Hopefully that was the last time. Because I think I should have always been doing stand up. I think that I was always a comedian. It's just that nobody ever pulled me aside and told me that's what I was doing. They just called me an asshole.
Yep.
Like, oh, this is comedy. These are jokes, right? But some of it did. I still do this sometimes if I'm playing like towns that aren't big cities. Indie on the Move is a website that basically you can just like mass email entire cities, all of their venues, all at once, with all your promo shit. And
oh wow.
Yeah, and it shows up as an actual email. It doesn't show up as like, so it's a huge booking resource for musicians. I got a lot of shows through that, and I used to when I was still doing both, which I think was 2 years ago, and it was like, and I was trying to mostly do stand up, but I wasn't getting booked enough because not enough people knew me yet. I didn't have credit. I was still starting. I would send those out and I'd say, hey, I'm a blues musician and I do stand-up comedy. I can do one or the other or both. And a lot of venues, more than you would think, were actually like, we would love to have a night of music. That they would want the comedy followed by the music, and I always pushed it the other way around. Because the music would just like soften everyone up. And then I know we book a bunch of local comics. I'd go onto like, whatever local Facebook and get like 3-4 comics to open for me. And I got a bunch of shows doing that. But I don't use Indie on the Move anymore because, with comedy is the only way to get on a good show, especially one worth driving to, is you need to know a comic in that town who knows the runner of the good show to vouch for you.
Especially if you're doing indie stuff.
Yeah, I mean, clubs don't book me, so.
Yeah, well, clubs don't book a lot of comics. That's that's the sad reality of it.
I don't have credits, Like, I mean, some clubs will, but not. I mean, they're all in New York, like, and not that. I mean, I'm not a club. I'd love to be a club comic. But.
Yeah, well, and that's one of those things where, and now especially with COVID, like everybody got demoted. It's essentially. Well, yeah, that's how I've looked at it. Everybody's been demoted. Like if you were a headliner doing theaters, you're probably now going to be headlining at clubs because of the social distancing and things like that. If you're a headliner, a club headliner, you're probably getting knocked back to feature and a feature to MC. Like that's just how it is. And there's not going to be as many. For at least for a little while, there's not going to be as many opportunities, and so and there's still the same amount of comics. Like comics didn't just up and quit doing comedy. I mean, we've been forced to quit doing comedy essentially, but as things are slowly kind of opening up, people are still going to want to do shows.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're right. I was hoping that COVID would just kill off like 90% of the open micers. It's like they're sharing a mic with filthy animals. Maybe there'll just be less open micers. And then...
No, I'm afraid there's going to be more because of all the virtual open mics that started. Like, it seems like so many, like, you have to, as a comic, we definitely were forced as comics that we had to kind of be forced into, like, creating new content and doing things like that during COVID and finding some other creative outlets. But there's a lot of open mics, and not just shows, like, just open mics now. And I feel like a lot of people are like, well, I ain't got nothing else to do. I've never done comedy. Let's do that. And so now we're going to have even more open mic comedians.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot more poor people, and that also attracts people to do comedy. Like, I mean, it's poor people tend to have less friends, especially if they go down in economic. Like if you had money and your friends had money, and then now you don't have money. If you had shitty friends, probably because you had a bunch of money, and people with money tend to have shitty friends because, money makes you shitty. Anyway, so now your shitty friends don't like you because you don't have money, so you need new friends. And comedy always, it just, I've always noticed this about comedy. 80% of people who do comedy just do it because they wouldn't have a social life otherwise.
Yeah, that definitely see that.
That's it. They're like, well, it's this or suicide, so they just start doing mics. And you're like, I feel for you, man, but dude, go to an AA meeting. I don't know what to tell you. You're not a comedian. You're just lonely.
Yeah, you definitely see that, and I feel like it's one of them things where you just hope, you're like, well, I hope you either get better or you just stay doing open mics and out of the way of people who are actually trying to make a living doing it, because that's where it gets it really gets, it's like, I'm one of them people where I'm like, I really admire people that are trying to fulfill their dreams and trying to work for that or whatever, because I'm that person. I'm trying to do that. But then I'm like, I'm also trying to make a living doing this. And when some guy is trying to fulfill their dreams and isn't good at doing this, suddenly taking up my stage time that I could be getting, it's like, oh, motherfucker.
I know. God. And you could just tell. There's so many you can just look at and you're like, you're never going to get better at this. You can do this for 20 years, and it's just like the nuance of why something is funny will never take seed and sprout in your fucking toxic mind. It's not going to happen for that person,
No, that's very, very true.
And you can't tell them that either,
No, because you don't want to be the jerk that just crushes their dreams.
I wish somebody had crushed my dreams when I was 18. I would be so much happier if I hadn't pursued my dreams for 25 fucking years. Because the thing that they don't tell you is that 99% of people, it remains a dream till you fucking die, and then you stop dreaming about it. But it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen for me. It might, maybe, but no, it's not. I'll do shows, I'll have fun. Maybe if I get really lucky, I might get some fucking TV spot when I'm 60, and the booker of the Late Show that probably doesn't even exist anymore just feels sorry for me and gives me a spot because I did so many years of not getting anywhere. There's so many examples of that. This is not an example of that because he's doing well, but I think he should be doing a lot better than he is Eddie Pepitone, right? He is so fucking funny. So genius. Such a master comic. And the fact that he's not bigger than he is, I'm sure he's still grinding and struggling to even he should be much higher up than he is,
Oh, absolutely. But I wonder if that's because of the career choices, or not necessarily career choices, but opportunities that comics take along the way. As an example, he used to be a booker for late night TV. So instead of being a comic trying to be on TV, he was helping all these other comics be on TV, essentially. You know what I mean? Ended up being kind of a guy behind the scenes. And a warm-up comic. Yeah, I believe he was a warm-up comic for either The Tonight Show or pretty sure he was the booker and the warm-up comic for one of the late-night shows. I can't remember if it was for Letterman or if it was for Jay Leno, but I'm pretty sure that was the case with him.
Why didn't he just book himself?
We probably,
an easy solution to that problem.
Well, yeah, right? And maybe he did once in a while, but it could also be one of them situations where in that, you can't book yourself because it's a conflict of interest, sometimes they have contracts. Well, and that could have been a contract that he signed. You know what I mean? That's all,
I book myself on every show that I produce.
Well, yeah, right? Exactly. But see, he wasn't producing. He was just booking. He was the talent coordinator.
I mean, I didn't know that about him. I didn't know. All I know about Eddie is what he puts on Instagram and his 2 specials. And, like, when the first one came out on Netflix, that I was just, like, astonished at how good he was and how nobody was talking about it. And it just bothered me. And I was like,
yeah.
And he's like, he pushes limits and boundaries about what's, like, he's not safe, right? And I just, like, watching him, I was like, best case scenario for me is that's how I wind up, right? Like, that level of, like, respected in the industry amongst other comics, but not really able to put your feet up and relax, you know?
Yep.
Which would be fine, actually. If I got to Eddie's level, I'd fucking blow Satan. Like, I don't, like, that would be, you know, like, where he's at seems unattainable to me. So it's just like...
The things Johnny will do to get some recognition.
Only blow Satan, nothing else. No butts.
Okay, that's fair. Although that might be a little too much, too. I don't know. Depends on how big it is. It's oh man, that's ridiculous. But yeah, and that's something with comedy though. You see a lot where there's these guys, especially road comics. This is a good example is how some of the road comics are the funniest comics that you'll never see because they're out working the road. They're making a decent living doing comedy, enough to support themselves. Some they're not, but they're still great, funny comics, and they just never get on TV or don't have what they're just not what TV's looking for, I guess. And they just don't, make it in that right, but they still do okay for themselves,
Yeah. I mean, if you can do that, then, there's a bunch of comics that come to mind who actually manage to live off the road. I mean, I do it when I'm out, I just can't stay out all year like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what you really have to do because you're not getting paid like $200-300 a show if you're lucky. Like that's not you're not going to come home with a savings to like just go for a couple months.
No,
you have to just keep doing it, which is exhausting.
Yeah, well, and that's where you run into like with comedy. You have to have your hand in so many different pots. It seems like because it's almost like you said you can't just make a living from comedy. Some comics do, but a lot of them comics are the ones that have legit TV credits. They've been in, movies or whatever. And, they're at a different level now. But you get a lot of comics, like struggling comics, even road comics. I bet you if you asked 5 road comics, like even features headliners, if they have a day job, 4 out of those 5 are going to be like, yeah, I do a part thing to help supplement my income. And that's like, this is one of the only industries where in order to do it, you have to have another job just in case,
Don't forget about actors.
Oh, all right. Fair enough.
Actors have it worse than comics because actors need someone else to even work. Right? Like,
that's true.
You can't just act on the street. I mean, you can, but like if you start acting on the street, you're a fucking mime. Basically, that's what you're doing. Like, I feel bad for actors, but that's the thing is if you make it as an actor, you get to be Leonardo DiCaprio, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like the reward is so much higher. Like if you make it as a comic, you're like Bill Burr, like which is awesome, but. Like you put Bill Burr and Leonardo DiCaprio together and just like 20 women and watch where they run. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
a different payout with that shit with acting. But the actors, like I have friends who are actors and like. I mean, basically, 95% of what they do is audition, which I guess that's the actor's open mic, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it really is. Yeah. That's something, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's like necessary evils with comedy. And that was something when I moved out to California. I went to a couple auditions, and I was just like, what the hell am I doing? This is not for me. It was like so weird to like go to an audition and see all these different people. And what was weird, and you talk about how like auditions, there's kind of like an actor's open mic. And that is something I observed while I was at an audition, is how a lot of these people knew each other from all the other auditions that they go to. Like, they run into each other all the time, and it's the same thing, you know, like in comedy, when you're grinding at open mics, you run into the same comics at all the different open mics.
Yeah.
It was that same kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, with actors, it's like, you know, it would be the same ones, because if they're casting, like, you know, a Latino woman, there's not going to be a bunch of like white girls showing up, right?
Absolutely,
anyway.
yeah, yep.
But yeah, it's. I mean, the arts are. I mean, this is my beef with it. Is like, how old are you?
I will be 42 in a month.
Okay, so you and I are the same generation. We're like right on that cusp, Gen X to millennial. Like, people keep trying to tell me I'm a millennial, and I keep telling people to shut the fuck up. I remember remembering phone numbers. That
right, exactly.
Cut off. Like, if you had more than 10 phone numbers memorized, you're Gen X.
I still remember some numbers from my youth.
Really?
Yeah, just a couple of ones of friends that I dialed all the time, but not very many. Not now, but
I only remember my home number. It was 212-627-5783. I mean, that number doesn't go anywhere anymore, but I should have kept that number. Those 212 numbers now, the Manhattan area code, they're worth $10,000.
Jeez.
If you want a 212 number, it's like 10, because you have to buy it from someone who has it. There's none left.
That's crazy.
Yeah, those things are money.
I didn't even know that was a thing, that you could buy phone numbers.
Yeah, you can. I found 212 Johnny A, and it belongs to what are the pussy doctors called? OBG.
Oh yeah, yep.
It's her fax number. And I was like, all right, it's not even your main number. It's your fax number. Like, I was like beginning to draft an email explaining how I'm a comedian and how these letters spell my name. And I was just about to hit send, and I was like, what are you doing right now? Like, is this what you're going to do with your life? Like, bother some fucking, you know, vaginal PhD to get your name in a 212 number. I was like, oh, you need to go for a run or something, because this is sad right here. Do you want another bomby bomb story? Cause
yeah, we can do another one.
Bombs.
All right, let's hear this one, and then I'm gonna ask some of the standard stuff too. So,
okay, I bombed my own special taping.
Oh Jesus!
Which is why it was never released. And this is the kicker, man. I only did the full hour once before, and I was like, I was taping it in Brooklyn, and the night before I booked a rehearsal show. I just needed to run the whole hour as a piece again before I filmed it, and I booked it in a shitty little dive bar, and then there's like, I don't know, 15, 20 people came. And it murdered. It killed. Like, it was just fire, everything you could want. And then the next night, we did the actual taping. About 100 people showed up, stage, lights, all of it. And I ate shit for 70 minutes straight. I did the whole fucking thing to silence.
Oh, wow.
It was, I couldn't, I was just, and you can see it. I mean, one day I will release this thing. Just because it really shows you the pain that a comic can go through. Because I'm like,
I'm laughing because I know that pain. I have felt it.
You're just like, and I'm just trying to like wake them up, poke them, and then like all the crowd work worked, of course, right? To like get them to snap out of it and like be like, you know, making fun of how shitty they were as an audience. At one point, a dog started barking, you know, like shit like that. And because we filmed it in this like fucking basically meth lab in Bushwick. Like, it was just a shitty Bushwick loft. Like, just God knows what happened there the night before. You could smell, like, the cum and blood, and just, like, it was... I mean, that's why we booked it there, because it was filthy and disgusting and supposed to be raw and awesome and all this crap. And, yeah, Rachel McCartney opened for me, and... She was like, God, that fucking crowd sucked, man. She's like, good luck doing, 70 minutes to these people. Yeah, and if I had just filmed the shitty dive bar the night before, I would have had a great special full of
right?
happiness. But, yeah.
Isn't that amazing how you can have, like, in comedy, you can have these shows where you're like, you would expect it not to go well, at a dive bar with only 15, 20 people. You're like, this will be, at best, this is going to just be okay. Tomorrow, 100 people, it's going to be the best show of my life. And then it's the opposite.
I couldn't believe it. Like, halfway through, I realized that there was no way I could use this. But I was committed. I mean, at that point, you're not going to, like, walk off the stage like a brat. You're like, you get it in the cans, you get what you got. Like, professional. But when I realized I wasn't going to get what I got, that's when I just started, like, going really off and just putting in, like, the darkest fucking jokes I had cut out of it. Just to fuck with the room, even just to make them hate me more. I was like, if you're going to hate me, I'm going to give you a reason to hate me. Is that
going to be the name of it if you release it? A reason to hate me?
Maybe. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I like that. I mean, the title was "The Revolution Will Be Hilarious," which is the first album I put out, and I had to use. This is what I used for the album because I was like, I'm done with this material. I'm not gonna try to get this again. Like, I wasted all of my money on production on this one show that bombed. Like, I'm not gonna go and scrounge together another $2,000 I don't have to try this again, right? And I had an iPhone recording of the only other time I had done the full hour, which was in a basement in St. Louis, right? And it killed. Like, there was like 10 people there, and they loved it. So the basement in St. Louis, I have an iPhone recording that I used for the album. The rehearsal, 15 people in a dive bar, killed. They love it. No recording of that. Go to actually film it. Cameras, lights, crew, packed room. Completely ate shit.
Oh, man.
That is so enigmatic of my life. That is over and over. I have stories like that where it's just like...
Well, that's comedy. Yeah. Like, I mean, that's comedy. That's a sign that you're a real comedian because...
Oh, good.
The nice thing about, it's not always nice, but the thing about comedy, it likes to keep us humble.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
I've definitely had some humbling experiences in my life in comedy. That's for sure. But that's like the worst when you put all that, because you're not just like you said, you're paying for that. That's one of the toughest parts about being an independent artist, because I'm the same. I do a lot of my own stuff, on my own. Like I've had a couple album release, not releases, but I've recorded a couple albums, never released them because I just wasn't happy with how they turned out. But I still paid. To have people professionally come in and record and luckily because it was just audio, it wasn't nearly as expensive and I was able to, cause I knew some people or whatever. So, but it's still money that I'm never going to get back. It's like, and you hope that you can sell tickets for a show like that to at least help buffer the cost of production. But then at the same time, you're like, well, I can't charge too much because I want people to come, So,
yeah, well, you realize why they, when you have the luxury of when you get bigger, they do it in 4 shows.
Yeah, right? Yeah, no, absolutely, yep. Even multiple couple shows helps. Yeah. What do you think happened that night? Like,
There was a couple things. One, the main one, I'm convinced this had a lot to do with it, was. The DP, the director of photography, insisted on having the lights really bright so the room wasn't dark. So the audience became very self-conscious. And my material is not gentle. So you're laughing at fucked up shit. So I think that there was no air conditioning and it was hot as fuck in there.
Oh, jeez.
And also, you know, I pulled from my, like, it was a mixture of fans and well-wishers. And all of the well-wishers sat up front, and all the fans, because they're cool, of course, sat, like, in the back of the space. So the well-wishers were, you know, there to support, but most of them had never been to a live comedy show before, you know, and it was those things. I mean, the thing that I'm actually kind of proud of it because I don't let them let me bomb. You know what I mean? Even though they're not laughing, I'm still doing it with everything I have, and I'm fucking with them. You know, I'm just sitting in it, and I'm just like committed to this is what the room is. And this is the material I have. I'm not going to start riffing and coming up with new material because I'm like just improvising. I'm taping. I got through it, you know. I mean, I edited it. I've watched it. It's hard to watch for me. I've had people who are close to me tell me to release it, that it's not bad, and in fact that it's really interesting because I am bombing. But
And that's a valid point. I mean, a lot of like comedy, like alt comedy, eats that stuff up. You know, like there's a lot of like people do specials on purpose. Like, you know, they do it weird on purpose. You know what I mean? Like there was that one special where I forget the comic's name, but he like filmed it in a warehouse essentially with no audience. You know, and things like that, you know, comics will only have two people, you know, like Maria Bamford, as an example, did that show, one of her specials in front of her parents or whatever. So there's definitely a market out there for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I hate all that shit.
That's fair.
And B, that's not what I was going for. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, I will release it at some point. I know I'll do that. I still have it. It's edited. It's mixed. It's sitting on a DVD. So if a coronal mass ejection comes and fries all our hard drives, I still have it. But it's not now. It's not something at this stage in my career I really need people watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to do me any favors right now.
Yep.
I had something similar happen with my second album recording. It wasn't as bad, but the room was so fucking weird, and like the audience was like so far away from me, and like I had to just pull them along the whole time, and the audience is not really, it's not the laugh track you want. And then of course 2 nights later in Florida, in just a shitty bar show that I was supposed to do 20 minutes, I ended up running the full 80 to absolute fire hysterical laughter. And I was like, why the fuck didn't I tape this one? You know, like that was the album. Like it's what like
that's kind of funny because I've actually had there's actually a running joke with some of my friends too about how like I'll go and I'll do all this stuff to do like a recording. Something happens, it doesn't turn out good, you know, or, you know, it just whatever. Especially like even taping auditions. I'll do it, something happens, it's not worth even submitting. Then I'll forget to hit record on my camera, go up and crush, and then I'm like, oh shit, I didn't hit record on my camera. I didn't get this, you know, and like it's happened so many times that my friends give me shit about that. They're like, well, you know, when you don't record, we know you're going to have a good set, but if you're trying to record, it's probably going to be mediocre.
There's only one solution to that, because the same thing happens to me, and that is to fucking record everything.
Yep, that's what I tried to do.
That little trickster god can't fuck with you anymore if you're recording all of it. You know, like every little mic, every little thing. There's never an opportunity for him to, like, you know, that might make it so you just bomb for the rest of your life. You know, I don't know. But Tom Waits once said songs hate to be recorded. And that's very true of any kind of performance art. It hates to be captured. It really... I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's psychological in the performer that, you know, this is like forever, or that's probably it. I mean, anything other than that is superstition, right?
Well, I think part of that, and it's probably still superstition, but it's also being like present and being in the moment. Like a live performance, even though you're doing the same material, for however long, when you do it in front of a different audience, it's still a different performance. Like there's that essence there. So you're there and in the room, and trying to capture that in forever, on video or audio or whatever. I kind of see that, because it's not necessarily being in the moment. I mean, you're in the moment, but you're also worrying about, having this recording for the future.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's kind of a little spacey, but
it makes sense. You're unconscious of it, you don't want to fuck up. Whereas when you don't care, I mean, it goes back to what athletes refer to as being in the zone, right? When you enter a flow state, you're not concerned with anything. You're just completely lost in the moment. And that's very easy to do at an open mic you don't want to be at, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're just like, fuck this mic, fuck you, fuck the walls, fuck everything. Here are my fucking jokes. Thank you the fuck much. I'm fucking off now. And everyone dies laughing because you have no attachment to the outcome. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you have an audition or if you're trying to tape something, like I bombed my audition at the Stand, like arguably the most important comedy club in New York after the Cellar, right? And then, I mean, I had a lot of things go against me, but like that were out of my control. But it was still like all the shows I had done, all the mics, the set worked fine, everything. And then I got to do the audition and I just ate shit. And it was just like, I actually bombed most of my New York City club auditions. Like I was just one after all the other shows, fine. If it wasn't on an audition when I just had spots at these clubs, fine. But if like the booker was watching me, I ate shit.
Do you feel like part of that is because maybe maybe unconsciously it's nerves and you have that added pressure? Because that's something I've noticed with myself, is that when I have an added pressure, like doing an audition for somebody or something to that effect, I always have a tendency to or even if I'm in a contest, if I sometimes just feel like there's that added pressure and I don't do as well because I'm more stressed out, I'm like, oh, I got to do a good job because the booker's here. And then I do terrible because I had that extra pressure on me.
Yeah. I think the moment you become attached to the outcome of whatever you're doing, you're going to fuck it up. Mm-hmm. Because you're so fixated on the end result, you're not focused on what you're doing in the present. Your mind is already, it's over. You're already at the end of the race while you're still running the race, right? Yep. Whereas you have a normal set, you're focused on the time you have on stage because it's enjoyable. But, when the booker is there, you're like, oh, I can't forget this segue and this, I have to take that part of this joke out because that's a little race. Whatever. Your mind is just like chewing on A, how they're going to see you, B, to be flawless, and C, really the main thing is you want them to come up to you afterwards and give you a big blowjob and hand you a sack of money and say, you're now king of the universe, right? That's in your crazy head. That's what you want. So if that's what you're doing, then why would you be focused on what you're on your set, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's flow state, and it's a very hard place to get at and stay. Like, I mean, I do all types of things to keep myself in a flow state, and it's so easy to just get knocked out of it,
Oh, absolutely. Well, and then too, especially in a situation like with your recording, you've got all that going on, and and I feel like if somebody else came to you and was like, hey, I want to record your special, and they're taking care of everything, all you have to do, show up, do your jokes, work with the director or whatever, but then you just show up and do your jokes, that pressure's not there. But when you're doing something as an independent producer and you got all these stakes in there, I find it sometimes it's hard to just focus on what you need to be focusing on, which is the set and the comedy and being in the moment. I know you were talking about that you still gave it your all, but you feel like maybe that part of that, like because of that pressure of also being the producer and all the stakes, just kind of maybe pulled away from the performance?
Yeah, actually, now you saying that reminded me of a lot of the things that I went through that day. And one of them was I did the audio for it myself because I'm an audio engineer. And that was like an added technical part of my brain that didn't need to be used. It was, I mean, I was setting it all up. I set up the set. I didn't have any help, really. I mean, I had a little help. I had the cameraman and the second camera, but yeah, I wasn't focused on, and I had to get everybody there too, right? So I was,
absolutely. Yep.
Shitting a brick that nobody was going to show up. You just where these are all jobs for a producer to just make sure the show happens, and then the comic should just walk on there, after having taken a nap and not giving a shit and just treating the show like it's nothing, right?
No, absolutely. The reason I was, bring that up is because I did a lot of my, like I said, I've done a lot of my own independent stuff, and it's the same. I'm sometimes I'm the one recording my audio, and I'm thinking about getting that ready and making sure that the record gets hit, and making sure it sounds good, making sure it's not going to peak because I'm not going to be monitoring it, and all these things or whatever going through your head, and then and it's like right before you go on stage, all that stuff is chaos, You're thinking all these things you got to make sure you did before you go on stage to get the performance recorded. Then you go up on stage and it's like, oh shit, I didn't really think about comedy,
It's definitely the other side of your brain you're using.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's so many gremlins, you know what I mean? In production, there's just so many gremlins just going around. It's like, you don't need this cable. And it's just like yanking things out and just like fucking with you. It's just, that's why film sets have like 500 people there working. You know what I mean? It's so the director, the cinematographer, and the actors can just actually make something good. Yeah. It's like you try to do. I mean, I've worked on a lot of film sets where it's been like 4 people and it's never come out right because everything is falling apart,
Yep. That's
it's
definitely. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Now, the bumming and bombing, the dreadful feeling you get after you bomb, how long does that last for you typically? And has it changed over the years, the more you've done comedy?
It depends what's at stake. Like when it took me a while to get over bombing the Stand audition. Like a really long time. A few months. I was like because that was, if that had gone another way, things would be very different, for me in New York and comedy. Like I could have, so that really sucked. Other ones, I mean, at an open mic, I don't give a shit at all. I'm expecting to bomb at an open mic, pretty much. I'm expecting all the comics to just be dicks. If I get a laugh at an open mic, I know that the joke is too dark, basically. That's what it tells me. It's like that. They'll get you canceled. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just have really shitty shows. Sometimes it depends whose fault it is. Is it my fault or is it is the audience just unreasonable that evening?
Yeah. Well, that's a good lead into the other thing I like to talk about is how do you analyze your sets after you bomb, or even after you have a good show? What do you kind of look for to determine, was it my fault or was it the audience?
You can generally, as far as the audience, if you're not up, I gauge it off the other comics. Like, how the audience is responding to them, if they're lively for them, and also if they're all kind of the same style of comic. And by that I mean if none of them are pushing any limits as to what's appropriate to be making fun of. So if the audience is just hating every comic, I just go up there and expect to just join the party of hate. But if every comic is having a great set and they have different styles, and then I go up and eat shit, that was totally on me.
Mm-hmm.
That happened in Denver, actually. Actually, no, that room wasn't really giving it up for anybody, but they particularly hated me. That was an important show that I bombed. I have a tendency to bomb when it really fucking matters, and that's really annoying.
I'm right there with you, buddy. So you're not alone, man. You're not alone. I've had plenty of those where it mattered. That's when I decided that for whatever reason I wasn't going to be as funny as I could have been.
I haven't bombed them all though.
That's good.
Audition at the comic strip that got me past there for late night. I was on Reddit, like, asking. I was like, yo, I'm having my first New York City club audition. I don't know, what should I do? Should I do clean, dirty? They're like, just, if you can do clean, because it's safer, no matter what.
Yep.
You're not going to not get booked because you're too clean, right? I was like, that's a really good way of looking at it. I don't, And so I'd, like, restructured my set and, like, took out all the curses and the audience was good, and I just, to me, I had this was my first New York City club audition, and it was before I had moved back to New York as a comic. I grew up in New York, left as a musician, came back as a comedian. So I really, like, New York City comedy was like this glowing orb to me of like, oh, like, it's like, holy shit, this is New York. So I had every expectation to not get past. I was like, there's no way. I'm not good enough. This is New York. Just enjoy the time on a legendary stage. You get 5 minutes at this epic fucking club. Just enjoy it. And, try to pass. Do clean shit. But whatever. And that's kind of how I went up. I bought myself, like, a new suit. And I was very happy about the suit. It was red. I've gotten a lot of shit from people saying I'm ripping off Richard Pryor. I'm just like, dude, he's not the only one who gets to wear a red suit. Like, go fuck yourself. Like, I get to wear a red suit too. And besides, he had a white shirt on. I had a black shirt on. And I was wearing a tie. He didn't have a tie. You can suck my dick. Anyway. And mine was more burgundy.
Bitter much?
So it's just annoying. It's like, dude, a red suit is a power move. That's all that is. You're saying, I have a dick and I know how to use it, or if you're a lady, I have a vagina. And anyway, but yeah, and I just went up and they loved me. They laughed at where they were supposed to laugh. It was a smooth set. I got off, and Richie passed me. And I was
nice.
like, holy fuck, now I have to move to New York. I wasn't even living there at the time. I flew up for it from New Orleans, completely expecting to just fly back and keep driving around the country doing...
Is that where you were living, was New Orleans?
Yeah, I went to... this is a joke. It's not very funny. It's just a clever way of looking at it. It's like I moved to New Orleans a drunken... a whiskey-drinking, bareback, fucking Delta blues musician, and I left New Orleans a sober, married comedian. Just not what's supposed to happen in New Orleans.
Right? That's for sure. Now we're going to do some fun stuff. We talked about all the sad stuff with comedy, so I like to do some fun stuff at the end.
Comedy can be fun?
Well... The questions can, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. Because how fun it is depends on your answers.
All right.
Do you have a pre-show ritual or a tradition?
Yeah. I pace around and hit my vape like a psycho.
Could be a good tradition. That works for you. And do you have, what's been your, and I have a feeling it might be related to this the comic strip set, but what's one of your favorite or best sets that you've done?
That show in Florida where I ran the 70-minute where I ran my full show when I was supposed to do 20, and like the audience was just incredible, and it was that was a lot of fun. That to me was why I started doing stand-up, was to be able to connect with an audience so deeply. And just take them through your mind and have them laugh at what you think is funny and, like, really laugh even harder at the really dark, painful shit, you know? And that was... I mean, passing the comic strip was it was a great feeling. But as far as a show, it was that one in, I think it was Fort Walden Beach, I want to say is where that was.
Oh, right on. The last thing I like to do is it's called Pick a Number. You're going to pick a number between 1 and 20, and then I'm going to ask you a corresponding question. And it's going to be fun. So go for it. What's your number?
No negative numbers?
No negative numbers.
No decimal points?
Nope. No 0.5s or minus 10s.
1 and 20, huh? I only get 20 to choose from. I'll go with 16.
16. All right. On average, how many times a week do you hurt yourself trying to dance in the shower?
0.
I
don't try to dance ever.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
There's no dancing.
If I'm trying to dance, I'm either being silly on purpose or I've had way too much alcohol and somebody needs to get me out of public.
Even when I was an alcoholic, I still would not cut a rug. I would just sit there and drink my whiskey and go, y'all are stupid for dancing. I don't get the appeal.
Yeah, right there with you. All right, where can people find you? Go ahead and plug your stuff.
I have a website, a YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram. The easiest way is to just dump my name into Google, Johnny Azari, Azari, and I populate. I will fill them pages.
Perfect, and a lot of that info will be in the show notes. Thank you, Johnny, for chatting with me.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was fun.
The Art of Bombing is a Blitzed Entertainment production. Hosted and produced by Dan Bublitz Jr., The Art of Bombing intro music was written and performed by John Holt. All other music used in this podcast was under the Creative Commons license. If you would like to help The Art of Bombing, you can do so by subscribing, rating, and reviewing our show on whatever podcast application you use to listen to The Art of Bombing. For previous episodes, blogs, and more, visit artofbombingpod.com. Have a great week. And remember, stay safe so you can live to love.